we go. All right, cool. And are y'all good at 1 o'clock for me to just hit admit all and I'll just keep adding people as they come? Okay, cool.
And we should mute for your.
Oh, sure, yeah. You can shout things out. It's fine. If you want to heckle.
Oh gosh, that's great.
Is that a collection of model cars behind you?
Well, there's this is the Simpsons car, and then over here is the Lego Ecto 1 that I built.
Excellent.
So I more more a Simpsons thing than a model car thing, I think.
Nice.
I know you guys are like professional, like a backdrop and stuff.
I guess you could say that. We're not very professional, but it looks that way.
I mean, we're all just doing our best, right?
Primarily, I think for the person who creates a lot of our library tutorials for him to record in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it does look good. I will say that there's a very intense orange wall. So
Yeah.
Everything has to be on brand, right?
You know it.
Oh, that's someone else's audio. It's not.
Oh, Ingrid's here. Ingrid.
I thought I saw her, but I was like, Dan. Hey, Dan.
I am just going to stare at the clock until it flips over to 3 minutes after. Then I think I will go. If that's good with everybody. All right, I see a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. How does that look? Look good? All right, I saw one set of thumbs up, so I'm going to take it. Thank you for coming to the Immersive Technologies panel. Each of the 2 groups, I guess we're going to each do 10 to 15 minute presentation and then take questions. I think that's what's happening as far as I know. And I lost the coin flip, so I get to go first. So, hi, I'm Grover. I work at James Madison University in Virginia in a department in the libraries called Digital Projects. We support kind of in a lot of ways, we support the things that a lot of other places don't. We just, when instructors come with research ideas or class assignments that involve digital technologies, we help them figure it out. And so one of the ones that I was recently asked to help out with was this was kind of one of those deans talking to other deans and having a great idea, which was I was asked to teach a 4-credit class where the expectation is that we would build a virtual tour of campus. And so let's do a VR. This is going to become a recurring theme in the presentation because VR, one of the main things I discovered doing this project is realizing that VR means a lot of very different things, kind of overlapping and related things that have very different requirements in terms of how complicated, how much time, what's required to actually do something with any of that. And so, like any reasonable person, starting a new project in a year that starts with a 2, I Googled JMU virtual tour. And got this. This is, it's if you Google JMU virtual tour, this is the thing that pops up. I'm gonna see if I can switch over to the browser. Here's the live one. You can see it's just kind of one of these things. It's a bunch of still photos. There are kind of hot spots that have videos. You can choose to go to different places. I don't know if any of you guys many of you are old enough to remember QuickTime VR. That's kind of what it made me think of immediately. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. That's well within my abilities. Absolutely, I can help do this class. And in fact, I was kind of, if I'm being honest, thinking a little, we're gonna have some extra time, so I got to come up with some other stuff for us to do. This isn't a whole class's worth of stuff. So that's great. The ask came from a program on campus called X Labs. And I'm reading right off of their website. It is a program that cultivates high impact, engaged learning and research experiences through cross-disciplinary collaboration. And a lot of that probably sounds very familiar to a lot of you guys because it's the same kind of ideas that cause a lot of universities to make maker spaces and interdisciplinary spaces and collaboration spaces. One of their hallmarks is that every class comes with like a problem to solve or a client that needs something and a facilitator, but really that the students are supposed to lead the class. That's like a core. They're supposed to do the work. They're supposed to come up with solutions. They're supposed to figure everything out. And essentially how this happened for them to come to me to ask for it, to teach the class, is that this was a class that they had done in 2017, and the client, who was JMU Admissions, basically the program was starting to fail a lot, and they just kind of wanted to create an updated version. I also learned that the previous class was a Unity class. It was top to bottom. They spent the whole semester essentially learning Unity, which if you're familiar with Unity, going from something like still panoramas to something like building a from scratch Unity application, that's a pretty big jump in difficulty, okay? And it's sort of one of those things, I was immediately reminded of a story from my own undergrad where I was taking some videography classes and I was like asking my professor, okay, I want to get better at lighting. Like, what do you do? And he's like, okay, well, here's 3-point lighting. And now you know how to do lighting. And I was like, yeah, but I want to go beyond 3-point lighting. He was like, oh, well, that's a whole career you spend your whole life working on and developing and getting better at. And I kind of feel like that a little bit about trying to build this custom tour in Unity. I also had an experience where I kind of sat in on similar classes and noticed that that they would spend a lot of time teaching Unity, but then the end projects did not actually use Unity very much, as if the students did not feel super comfortable even after a whole semester of learning Unity. So really what they wanted is, I kind of expressed these concerns to them, but they wanted to do a VR class. And that's kind of, they were pretty comfortable with me doing kind of whatever I wanted to with the class, as long as I was doing a VR. And so X Labs itself was also in a little bit of a transition in terms of staffing and leadership, and they just really they kind of needed this class to happen. One other problem we ran into doing this for my position as the library is they're used to professors from academic departments coming in with, the class would live kind of in their departments, and I didn't have an academic department. So that was another problem. Luckily, I didn't have to solve that problem. That was a problem for someone else to solve. And it ended up going in as a university studies class. So the next step is to talk to the client. And so we talked to JMU Admissions. Our contact in JMU Admissions could not have been kinder, could not have been better to work with. Really, absolutely a great person to work with, and was very realistic about what was able to be accomplished. It was at this point that I learned that when we were saying virtual tour, that's not actually what we were supposed to create. So if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see there's 3 kiosks that live in the admissions building. And so they were not looking to create something that would replace a physical tour, but something that could show off experiences that were not available to someone just on the tour. If you just show up on a regular Thursday, maybe there's a football game going on, maybe there isn't, right? Maybe there's something exciting going on in the Fine Arts Center, maybe there isn't, right? And so they wanted to try and create something in that way. It's also it's also worthwhile to mention that they were also very clear that it being student made was really important. Actually, as much as anything that the actual tour did, the fact that they could say, hey, students at our university made this thing was kind of the most important thing. He was also very clear, and I think this is on a later slide, he was very clear that he wanted them to have a good class experience, and that was more important. And that's really a wise thing to figure out. So now we're going to do a VR tour, right? So there's all these different ideas of what VR is, what the assignment is, all of these different things that come together. And so in a longer version of this presentation, we might disambiguate between all the different kinds of virtual reality. But basically, what I want to break it down to, or what I broke it down to for the purposes of this exercise, is virtual reality as a fully immersive, stereoscopic, interactive environment, right? And that was not going to be something we were going to be capable of doing, right? But also, I was thinking about students taking this class. They're taking the VR class. It would be really strange if we didn't cover that at all, right? And then there is this idea of 360 video, a video that many of you are probably familiar and have worked with that at least a little bit. We have cameras that sort of take a stereoscopic video, or excuse me, not stereoscopic video, but a distorted video. Let's see if I can switch over to that. A video that looks something like this, right? That it is a distorted video that is made to be stretched around a virtual sphere. And that is something that is possible. Still kind of a lot for students to get their heads around, especially if they've never done a lot of video editing in the first place, right? The other thing I learned about 360 video doing this project is that the most common usage of 360 video is really just as an editing tool for 2D video. People use it as a way to essentially capture video in all directions at all times, and then kind of choose their shot from that later. So a lot of the tutorials and things that they could look at were really focused on sort of turning this into standard 2D video. Okay, so I have realized at this point, the classes, we're kind of starting to get close to the semester starting, and I have realized 3 fundamental truths. Number 1, it's not reasonable, right? It's for students to be able to create something that could actually be used in production in a single semester. Because I don't come from a department, because I don't have any prereqs, because there's really kind of nothing, these are just going to be just students who might not have any experience doing any kind of media creation like this. So it's really not reasonable. And I suspect even if you did have students that I suspect previous instructors helped a lot with that finished product. Again, if we had a little more time, we could go into what that finished product was. It's impressive. It is not. I don't think it is something that students could create in a single semester. Number 2 is that any potential solution had to be low or no budget friendly. One of the interesting things about X Labs being the position that it was is that they were not in a position to provide almost any support whatsoever, including things like computers to do the work on. There actually weren't any computers available for us to use as part of our class. It was kind of wild. Things that are you would generally expect to be available in most classrooms. So I had to come up with solutions that made it possible for them to do this, to do something, right? But also I didn't want to feed them the solutions. I didn't want to come up with the solution for them. And again, the third one is, as I said before, that it's really important. I think the most important thing is to make sure that they have a good class rather than get too focused on that end product. We want to work towards that end product and treat it like a real goal. But realistically, in the back of my mind, failure is absolutely, it has to be an option because it's probably not going to be all that successful. I can see that I am running over time already. I put this in here because there's a little bit of a thing I observed several times, talking with other professors, even on campus. I talked with a lot of students and a lot of faculty about similar projects that had happened. And there's kind of this tendency to sort of just assume when it comes to technology, kids have got it. They can figure it out. It's fine. And sort of because, they might be able to create really impressive TikTok videos, that means that they'll be good at Unity. Right. And those are extremely different kinds of things. Even sort of highly technical students, a lot of you might have had the experience of having to teach students who are very, very capable of building 3D models. You have to then teach them how to pull the file onto a USB flash drive because they have just never done that before. So things that we might, as technologists, consider basics, it's sort of about everyone's different experiences. And so it's really important that we try to meet students where they are and that we try not to, I think most of us would agree, trying not to brand kids as either technical or not technical, right? It's a lot about the experiences that they bring into the situation. Okay, so what do we actually end up doing? This is the structure for the course that I actually came up with. So I scheduled 6 weeks of technology, education, and experience just to make sure that everyone in the class had at least touched some of these technologies. You can see over there on the right, those are kind of like the 6 technology weeks that I put on the schedule. These are kind of, each week was going to be dedicated to one of these. And then 10 weeks was going to be just project time for them, to divide them into 3 different teams and kind of let them really take charge of the class, kind of flip it entirely and let them totally take charge. So at this point, I want to see if anyone realizes the huge mistake, especially considering the sort of high horse that I was just on. I have now dismounted that high horse because there's something kind of really obvious missing from this list. Does anybody else see it? I figured it out literally like 5 days before the class started. You can throw it in the chat or just shout it out. Yuri has gotten the answer. Yes, that is absolutely correct. The correct answer is I forgot to let them do a VR. That it's really important. I am making the exact mistake that I just talked about, that I talk about all the time. Again, it's a high horse that I get on quite often. I was making that same mistake. I didn't actually give them time or schedule time for them to just experience VR, a thing a lot of them have probably never done. And so that is the thing we did. Let's see, I'm struggling here with technology. Yeah, so I actually took the AR stuff out completely to make a little bit of time for that. The DaVinci Resolve stuff, that is a lesson that I learned, is that all of the pieces in terms of trying to capturing a 360 video and then moving that into any kind of environment, it's just tricky. Like there's just 1,000 gotchas, there's 1,000 mistakes, there's just all of these different pieces and solutions that kind of work in these scenarios but not other. It's surprisingly difficult to take the video once you've captured it, and even once you've edited that video, to then put it somewhere or do something with it that people can actually see it and look at it. And so the one tool you might not be, most of these are probably pretty familiar to you, but the one you might not be familiar with is Stornoway. So Stornoway is a tool I found. They're a pretty young company, which is I always find exciting because they're usually pretty eager to work with you and help you out and help you figure out solutions. So they are a nonlinear interactive video platform. They basically let you create like choose your own adventure videos that can be hosted on YouTube or their own platform. And crucially, you can take a video and tell it to deliver it as if it's a 360 video with a checkbox. And that's, you have no idea how many problems that solved. It was really, really helpful. They also have a plugin. They call it a plugin for Unity. What it really is a Unity project that is kind of already set up to slurp in your Stornoway projects and turn them into standalone applications that can run in a VR headset. And so that's kind of how we kind of got around working with Unity. We still had to do a lot of Unity work. The Unity team, I'm going to skip over these because I think I'm going way over time. The three teams, but the Unity team, most of their job was less about creating something in Unity and just solving problems, solving errors, solving how to get things uploaded into the Android store, how to get things onto the headset. That was kind of most of what they did. And so it kind of worked at the end. I'm really putting my, it's okay to fail to the test. We did create a program that you can see. And in fact, the very next slide is the link to that program. I'm not going to take up any more time, but it is, I'll put this link in the chat maybe. It is a functional project that works. It is not something that the client could actually use and put into production at any time. So again, I think I've gone a little over, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your time. I think we're going to have question and answer time after my co-presenters have done their presentation. So I'm going to hand it off to you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, let me stop sharing. There we go.
All right. Can people see my slides all right? All right. Oh, let me get back to the front of the presentation. Sorry. All right. My name is Michelle Brannon.
And I am Paris Whalen. I am the media literacy librarian here. And we're missing Shelly Obar, who is the studio manager and library's production media producer. It's a long name.
She is, yeah, Shelly is our studio manager and the library's media producer. So we are part of a department called Immersive Spaces and Technologies. Our department was born last August in a library reorganization. However, some of our services and the positions that became a new department had already been in existence within the library, with the exception of the makerspace that we opened this year. So our department consists of subject librarians who serve the College of Communication and Information, the Haslam College of Business, and the College of Architecture and Design, as well as multiple creativity spaces and services within Hodges Library, our main library on campus. So we have the studio, our media and design lab, which consists of an editing lab, but also multiple production spaces, 3 audio rooms, a video production space, a virtual reality room. So on this site, I have some pictures of our spaces on the next slide. We have on the right, you'll see the picture of our Experience Point esports lab. And this space is used in a kind of a dual purpose way. During days, groups and classes can utilize the space and reserve the space. So of course our esports team practices in there, but we also have data visualization workshops, studio editing workshops, classes that need higher performing computers working in that space. In the evenings, workstations are open to students to log in for gaming. All the workstations are streaming capable, and we've even hosted or been part of hosting some esports competitions on campus. And then in the center, you see our makerspace. This is our newest space. It was opened this February, and we've had an exciting time over the spring and summer, bringing groups in classes and building up engagement in that space.
So as y'all can all imagine, the studio is no different than any other place in the library. Other than that, we are technology rich and we want for everyone to have access to such. So you're probably wondering, how do we actually promote inclusion and equity for our students or our patrons in general, including our instructors and faculty members? So one of the things we do is we are leveling the socioeconomic disparities. So that means that we are leveling the paying students for all of our students. So they can come in no matter whether they have experience in something, whether they have access to computers or technology at home. They can come into the studio, the equipment desk, the makerspace, and they have access to all those things right off the bat because they pay tuition, but also because we are there to help them. Secondly, we also enable assignments that require the use of technology. So we have instructors that come to us with their assignments, and we are able to support them by not only providing the instruction, but also the equipment and the actual process and spaces for them to be successful. We're also able to support the students. So not only do we give the instruction for them, we're also able to walk them through that process and point them to the appropriate resources. Third, we are able to help them develop literacy skills, and that's kind of across the board from information to digital to media literacy. Many of us cross over and do general library instruction as well, so we're introducing them to the basic library services, such as the databases and whatnot, which oftentimes they'll later have us for a media project. So not only are they taking what we teach them in these general orientations, but we're applying that to their actual projects. And then they're able to come into the studio or the other spaces, gaming and all, and actually receive training and support from our staff members as well as our students. And we'll be talking about our team and team building a little bit later. Finally, we do facilitate collaboration and creativity. Obviously, our students can come to us for project assignments, but they can also come to us for things outside of that, whether it be their personal things or competitions on campus. We have the spaces and the equipment for them to use. And because they're all coming in at different levels, hopefully they can learn from each other, which will foster creativity and innovation. Now, what does that look like in general? Like, let's put this stuff in context as far as the library goes. How do we support the curriculum? So first off, we are at Hodges Library, which is the main library. We have two others, Pendergrass, which is our Ag Vet library, and Divine, which is our music library. As far as Hodges goes, we have 1,417,000 people that have walked through our doors and participated in the library in the year 22-23. Of these individuals, we have had interactions with many of them. I do not know the exact number. This goes from, directional things, as we all know, such as where's the bathroom, to studio support, gaming support, as well as makerspace activities. Across the board, we all interact with these students. What I can say is that we do engage with over 7 departments, and I think that's I'm being on the safe side, but that includes, our English department, which often comes to us for instruction on how to create public service videos. They also ask for direction on how to create websites for gallery museums. We have Shelley does instruction for our cinema studies department. So they come in, they ask for specific things on film. That's not exactly my advice, but that's Shelley's jam. So she gets in and she does all of that. Michelle and I both do research poster instruction as well. And that goes from College of Nursing to the College of Communication and Information Science, whether it be undergraduate or graduate. Those are just a few of the departments that we support. In general, I do about 35 or more one-shots that's specific to media literacy instruction. So that is like my English courses who are asking for PSAs, information, infographics and things like that. This does not include things such as consultations or those directional things, or really any of Michelle or Shelley's instructions. So this is just mine alone. But finally, I just wanted to give you an idea of how this kind of works when we are supporting the curriculum. The final thing you see here is our research posters that were, what is it, print?
We're printing, yeah.
That were
The request.
submission request, there you go. So what it kind of looks like for us, if we're talking about the entire process, is that someone, a nutrition class comes to us and asks for a research workshop or instruction session. We go in, we tell them how to build out their posters, what it might look like visually, what software and what we have to support them. We prepare our students ahead of time. We also tell them about our printing services. So that's when the studio may come in and we talk about how to submit them, where they can submit them, and then the studio takes care of it. So as of last year, we printed about 1,681 posters. So that's just an example of what we do. That's a pretty decent amount. There you go, finally. So as the media literacy librarian, what does it look like when I am actually supporting the curriculum? First off, I mentioned it before, I am mostly focused on them critically analyzing their media sources right out the box. So whether I'm teaching them how to create a poster or not, I try to give them that basic general instruction of like, use the library website. If I can have a chance to talk to them about the LibKey Nomad plugin, I do that as well. I try to make sure that they're using, pulling from government or organizational websites versus just some random place, even Wikipedia sometimes. Secondly, I try to make sure that we have structured guidance from them. So I try to give them steps along with the actual resources and the service points necessary in each step. Again, they all come at different levels. Sometimes they're working in groups, and I just want to make sure no matter where you get placed in the group, who or isn't doing their part, they know what should be happening to be successful at the end of their project or whatever they're working on. Third, I touch on responsible and ethical creation. Obviously, many of these people are creating things. I preach to them to please be authentic in what you're doing and not to stretch the story. What you create is attached to you and your name, so just make sure that you're giving credit accordingly and make sure that you're not spreading misinformation or malinformation. And finally, I have the interactive assessments that I do throughout the instruction that I do to make sure that I'm catching everyone, no matter what level they're at whenever they come into the classroom. So sometimes that's just something as simple as an anonymous Mentimeter with a word cloud where we're just trying to discuss terms. Other times it's students looking at a poster and, you know, they like to be judgy. So we look at a poster from the past or something that's really messy and we talk about what we don't like or what's working and not working. And that's just one way to kind of get them involved. Finally, I do a assessment at the end. It's just 5 questions, which basically asks about the steps in a process, as well as who they would come to if they absolutely didn't listen that day, if they didn't have it in them. I'm just like, just come here, hit me up. It is my job to know. I'm the expert in this. You just let me know how I can meet you. So that is how I support the curriculum.
So in addition to supporting the curriculum, as a land-grant university, we are focused on supporting the community, and specifically the university is very focused on outreach and engagement with the state of Tennessee, across the state of Tennessee right now, and has a lot of goals within our strategic plan around this. So one thing we opened our makerspace in February. So we spent a lot of the spring semester working to engage with faculty and bring classes in and work. And a lot of times in the summers, the library is very quiet and we plan for that time to be projects, right? We get to catch up on things, get ready for fall, work on new things. What I was really caught off guard by was how popular our makerspace would be this summer with all the K through 12 programs that happen around campus on summer, all these summer camps, all these different organizations wanting to do engagement in our makerspace. So here you can see a few different things. We did some VR work with the Future program, and the Future program is really interesting. It really aims to help young adults with developmental disabilities transition from high school to adult life. So this is sort of a program to help them become more independent and learn how to kind of deal with their disabilities as an adult in the world. And so that was a really meaningful, we've had a lot of meaningful engagements with students in that program. The next thing you see here, every spring we do we host a mini conference for high schoolers called Big Orange STEM Saturday. It's aimed at teaching these juniors and seniors in high school about STEM-related careers and the types of educational pathways to those careers. And it really is a conference experience with speakers, and part of the experience is a big exhibitor area. And so we we're doing some fun green screen pictures with them and talking to them about the resources available in the studio. And then the last thing you see here are 200 4-Hers that came through, and we split them into different groups, and we had them cycle around doing making buttons. We had them experiencing VR. They were doing some research on environmental materials in the library databases, and they did a tour of the library, and they did something else. So we have them kind of split in groups and rotate around, because obviously nobody can work with 200 kids and doing something like even playing Beat Saber all at once. That's a lot. So we've been having a very fun summer, a very active summer, engaged with our K through 12 community. And in terms of cultivating the team, the way we are able to make our services really approachable to students, welcoming to all students, is really instilling the values of our customer service and the values of our library in our team, in our student workers. So it really starts with creating a culture of helping, thinking about how technology can be intimidating to people. And so we make it imperative that our students maintain approachability. As people enter the space, we acknowledge them. We tease, ask students as soon as they're getting towards the desk, go ahead and speak to them, even if it looks like they're going to walk past the desk and go to a study room. Engage with them, speak, and ask if there's anything you can help with. We do a lot to try to make it less intimidating. We create things like tip sheets. So these are little kind of quick tips for a very common sort of process we see people working with. For instance, we have a whole group of education students working on certifications. They have to record themselves in front of a K through 12 classroom and submit that as part of the certification process. Many of them will have a situation where one of the students didn't give permission to be on a video, and they need to blur that student out. And so we have a quick tip sheet on how do you do this in Adobe Premiere? How do you blur out that one student in the classroom? And so we try to make things like that help people with complex processes. We always are doing training projects with our student workers. This is how we get them to learn new technology, develop their skills, and also how we have some fun team building things. So we might think about, oh, we have a podcast class coming in, or we have that sound art class coming in, and they're learning how to do Foley. So here's the assignment we want you to do. We want you to go find a picture book in the juvenile collection, record it into either Logic or GarageBand, and then we want you to work on adding Foley to the story. And so this is how they start learning how to develop those Foley skills. And then when that class comes in, they're able to help the students. So sometimes we do fun things. This is pictures of some of the Illustrator donuts some of our students created to learn how to use the pen tool, working with it. And so at the finish of the donut party, we printed off people's donuts. We brought in donuts and had an actual donut party and had a lot of fun talking to the students about the choices they made in their designs. So these are the types of things we do to try to build our team and try to get them to think about the experiences of the students who are coming into the spaces that they're working with. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So we'd like to open it up now for questions for the panel.
I see a question in the chat from Ken. Can you explain how a 4-credit course with no home department can happen? Yeah, I mean, the great news once again is that was not my problem to solve, which was very nice. It ran as a university studies course, which it is apparently like there have been independent studies programs before, but I think university studies as a I probably shouldn't say it because I'm really just guessing. I think it's newish, and they're trying to get it set up for circumstances like this, basically, so that things that don't have a home department. In terms of validating that, I'm again very grateful that I do not have to do that. So I really can't say. Follow-up question, it's a freshman course? No, it is actually, and in fact, a point I kind of skipped over for time, is that I have a The only reason I think the class actually had enough students to run is that there was an advisor in our information technology department that basically suggested it to the advisee they had. I'm not sure why. I don't know this advisor. The students told me this after it happened, so I honestly don't know anything about it. So most of the students were sophomore, junior, kind of in that area. I think I had a couple seniors.
I have a question for you, Grover. If you had to do it over again, what would you change about your course?
Wow, that's a great question. And I have been thinking about it. They're sort of being very quiet about whether the course will run again. I actually have no idea whether the course will ever run again. Um, I think it would be nice. It would be nice to be able to start from where we left off, and then work on it. Because if you did click on the link, you'll see it is a functional 360. A lot of different things you can navigate to different places. That's great. There's a lot of things that could be improved, I guess, would be a way to put that. And so it might be nice to sort of start with that base, and sort of move on from there. I think I would, one thing I think I skipped over is I would love to actually have more sort of dedicated resources, because it was a lot of cobbling things together with free software, and sort of like stuff we could borrow. They did eventually buy us a couple Insta360 cameras, and they actually bought us a 3D scanner, which I was very surprised by. I think there was some extra money left over. Um, uh, so it would be nice. That's one thing I would love to fix, but of course that's not actually, again, also not really part of my anything I can really have much influence over. So
Grover, this is more of a comment more than anything, but I was really excited to hear your presentation because pre-COVID, we attempted to do a 360 tour and we had the 360 fly, and it was a nightmare because we couldn't find any support for it. So you spend all this money on this thing and like it was new, so nobody else was talking about it, no matter whether you're on Reddit, you're talking to other people, every forum you can, it was just quiet. So it was very difficult to use. I'm glad that you told us about some other resources and your experience.
yeah, I was surprised to realize, like, it's actually very few. I'm hoping that like the Apple Vision changes this a little bit, but actually very few people are using 360 cameras for 360 video.
Yeah.
All the resources I could come up with, all this, Google searching and all the kind of education I was trying to do for myself and for the students, it was really hard to find stuff that was really genuinely, we're going to make a 360-degree end product. It looks like there's a class for you guys in the chat.
How do you manage the priority between the campus community versus the local community outreach and engagement? Okay, that's a really good question. We do have a community engagement librarian. That is not her exact title. It's something really long and complicated. And she is the point person with most of the K through 12 groups. She is also the person who leads the committee that organizes the the STEM-based conference that we run. So typically a group will contact her and then she'll work with different people throughout the libraries, depending on how big the group is and what they're needing to do to coordinate this sort of activities and instruction and things there. And we have a team in the studio, so we try to balance the requests as best we can. And there have been times where we just simply don't have anybody available or can't aren't able to accommodate a group. And sometimes we have had, I have had to say, we can't do that group this day because we have this English class we're already working with, and so our space isn't going to be available. And so it's just a matter of negotiating on the schedule and working with the groups as best we can. But it is really great to have that person be the point person for the libraries and all those outside community organizations. And it doesn't matter if it's K through 12 or if it's like a nonprofit, or if they're wanting to work with the libraries, they kind of go through that office. Oh, for your one-shot session on poster design, is it a series of classes or just one? And how long is each class? They sound really great.
It was a series pre-COVID. Now we do one-shots mostly, but Michelle does do a workshop. And what was the second part? Second kid. How long? Oh, how long is each class? Okay. I think your workshops are what, like 2 sessions, 90. Most of my workshops are only 50 minutes, so it is very fast. I try to give them as much information as possible in the greatest way as possible, without overwhelming them. But it is possible with a lot of planning and a lot of interaction is really what it is. Those the posters that I was talking about earlier where we judge and stuff like that, people love to be judgy and it really gets their attention. So
yeah, doing the poster critique is part of the presentation when you're learning about developing and designing research posters, really shows them examples of both good and bad posters. So we show both, some that could really use, like, you could tell this person needed to sleep on it and do one more round of editing, right? They slapped it together too quick. And you can point out those things and it really helps. When Paris was talking about the one I do with graduate students, we do also include our poster workshop as part of a larger series called What's Your Work About? And we have somebody from the Writing Center who does a workshop on writing abstracts. I do the one on posters, so we have the kind of written, the visualization, and then we have somebody talking about oral presentations like conference presentations.
I do not do most of the podcasting workshop. That's actually Shelly, but we all have the same process. We have a form on our website that they can submit their instruction requests from. So it's like, the day, the time that they prefer, what it's about. And then we just divvy it up according to whoever's skills. Sometimes we do get requests through emails, especially when they get comfortable with you, but we try to force them to go through the request form. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll draw people's attention to Jonathan Bradley's comments in the chat. And in some ways I agree, and in some ways I don't. I think it's, again, that's sort of what I was trying to get at with, we kind of lump all these technologies together when they work very, very differently and have sort of like wildly different, both in terms of complexity of building them and in terms of like just what you can use, what they're good for, what they are. I would say also though that we also work with a English professor who teaches a class. It sort of it's under a film program, but it is an immersive media sort of critique and overview kind of class. And as their final projects, they have the option of, rather than writing a paper, of creating what are essentially 360 video programs. And I've actually been really impressed that they have actually more than almost anything that sort of professionals have produced, frankly. Some of the work that the students are putting together for these assignments have really actually gone a long way to sort of helping me to see the potential and where it can be good. I think the challenge is always when we kind of try to stick everything in a single box and then try to use it for everything.
Good job. That's awesome.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a really great retail merchandising class.
Was it the class created the grocery store, or was it individual groups?
Individual groups.
Oh, I love it. That's
Did
great.
they, did they,
It's actually a multi-semester
Okay.
program. I mean, this is the third. We've worked with 3 different classes on this, but we actually did a IRB and survey data, and we're working on detailed content analysis with design theory, and currently writing a piece, finishing that up. But it's a 2-year study that we've been doing. I too started with the 360 here in Minnesota, hoping that would be the way we went. But as times have gone on, and we're learning Unity, but we're not there yet. But as time has gone on, we've found a lot of value in SketchUp and Enscape for the VR adaptation, and it's worked really well, at least in some cases.
We've done some projects. There's a history professor, especially, who's really interested in using SketchUp to create historical immersive spaces. Yeah, I agree. That's actually really,
They're fantastic for space design,
yeah.
which isn't every use case, of course.
Oh, thank you for the links to the tutorials.
that's awesome, thank
That's
you.
excellent.
Yes, open them now.
Open them before this Zoom room closes, you all.
Will the chat be available as well, or no?
You can download it. Everyone can download the chat, I think, that you guys have that capability.
I was just-
But I just went ahead and made a very quick download, and I threw it back into the chat as a file if people want to grab it quickly.
Nice.
So we are at time, but I'm so excited by all this wonderful discussion and community resource sharing. Thank you guys so much for presenting, and I am just really excited about the kind of work that y'all are doing to collaborate and to bring immersive technologies into all sorts of classrooms. So awesome work.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.